To be in the house of the Lord. Let's wait for everybody to find their way back to their seats. I love that everybody loves each other. All right. So today's an exciting Sunday. This is our last Sunday of our mission series. So that means this is the last Sunday that you get to hear somebody else speak that's not me. So just soak it in today. It's going to be an awesome Sunday. I will introduce her in a few minutes, but somebody that we all know and love very much. So before we get into our message, though, we have a lot of things that we want to cover. The first thing is that we are getting ready to ramp up our Connect groups again. We love Connect groups. Raise your hand, please, if you are in a Connect group, and if you have been enjoying being in a Connect group. Connect groups are an awesome way to get connected. That's what we want to do. We're Connect Church. We connect to the Lord and we connect to each other, right? So we want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to connect with each other. And that means that has an opportunity to build relationships. We don't just want to come to church, sing some awesome songs, worship the Lord, hear a great message, and leave, and then come back and do it all again after struggling all week. We want to be able to connect together. We want to be able to do life together. So we're getting ready to launch our Connect groups. Natasha told me earlier, I got to introduce myself because there's people here that might not know who we are. I'm Pastor Zach. I'm the pastor here at Connect Church. My wife, Natasha, here as well. Not used to that because, we just all know each other really well. But anyway, we love being here. We love this church. We love this community. And we are excited to see God doing great things and growing this body of believers. So one way we do that is by growing together in our Connect group. So if you have not signed up yet, there's a sign-up sheet out back. You can put your name on, and we will get you into a Connect group. Thursday night, this Thursday, we are having trivia. And it's called Connect Groups Trivia Night. But if you are not in a Connect group yet, we please encourage you to come as well, because that's how you're going to get to know people, and we'll try to get you into a group. But it's going to be a great time. I'm very excited because I love trivia, and I know that I say all the time that I'm going to beat you, and then I backtrack on it. I am just really competitive, so if you want to see me get angry, come on out Thursday night, because typically I don't do well. But it's going to be a great time. I'm really excited, and we're going to have food. We're going to have fun. We're going to just have a great fellowship together. You got it? All right. Next thing, we have our birthday celebration coming up, and that is on September 15th at 6:30 p.m. You're not going to want to miss this. Do we have a video to play for that today? I know we played one last week. Oh, okay. So you saw last week, but we are going to be doing some awesome things. If you want to come out and just hear what God has done in our church in the last year, make sure you're here on September 15th. It's a Friday night, 6:30. It's after work, so everybody can come. If you want to sign up to bring some food, go ahead and sign up out back. But we're just going to get ready to celebrate what God has done over the last year, because he's done a lot of great things. And not just in the church, but in the lives of the people in our church. So I'm really excited to hear the testimonies of what God has done. I'm really excited to celebrate with everybody as we look forward to year 9 of Connect Church. This is crazy, right? Who has been here since the beginning? Can you guys believe that it has been 8 years already? That's crazy, and I'm just so blessed and honored to be a part of this. So it's going to be an awesome time, September 15th, 6:30. I'm going to invite my friend Mr. Ray to come up here, because he's going to just explain something that we're going to be doing. Yeah, everybody say, hey, Mr. Ray. He started our budget class last week. It was really awesome. If you missed the first week, come on out Tuesday night at 6:30. But we've been talking about missions, and we've been talking about reaching out into the world, right? And so I know for Christmas, typically we reach out and to our community, which we're still going to do this year in some way. We haven't figured that out. But this year we also want to try Operation Christmas Child. I don't know if you've ever heard of Operation Christmas Child, but this is a really easy way to reach out to the world for Christmas. So I'm going to let Mr. Ray explain a little bit.
How long do I have?
You got it, man.
Oh gosh, you told me only 3 minutes on each subject. I am going to put a plug in for the finance class, the budget class. If you came last Tuesday, come again this Tuesday. If you didn't come last Tuesday and it's laid on your heart to come Come this Tuesday, I will do my best to catch you all up. If you want, I'll be after church. I have the papers. I'll give them to you so that you'll be somewhat familiar. That's number one of my passion. Number two of my passion is Operation Christmas Child. I never thought that God would lead me to such a wonderful organization and a wonderful purpose. Back home in Zephyr Hill, our church has been involved in that for a number of years, and we have grown. This year we're doing 1,000 boxes. It's just something that is laid on the people's hearts to send these missionaries all over the world, because each box is a missionary. Each box goes to a child that probably has never gotten a gift in their life. And they open these boxes up, and it's filled with toys and color crayons and just a whole bunch of things. Plus there's the Word of God. And it's brought to their school or to their church, and they're handed out, and they pray over them, and they have a bunch of fun. They're easy to do. You can do a box. There's one shown here. That's a plastic one, I believe. Any shoebox you can fill. And put a toy in. Put some personal items in. A comb, toothbrush. It doesn't have to be expensive. You can fill a box for less than $15. You can probably fill a box for less than $10. Our church makes a lot of the items that we put in. And I've spent my summer this year, I've made 336 tic-tac-toe games using bottle caps. I've made 400 spinners using CD disc, a bottle cap, and a marble. It's a wonderful way to spend some quality time with yourself, and you know that you're helping. Next Saturday, there's a meeting in Gardner, and I told Pastor Zach about it, and I've reserved one space for somebody to come, whether him or if he wants to send somebody else. It's kind of a national day that Operation Christmas Child groups get together. Again, I'll be after church. I'll talk to you about Operation Christmas Child. I'll talk to you about budget. I'll talk to you about this church because it's absolutely wonderful. God has led me to my second home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Like I said, we're really excited to just reach out to our community, but also to the world. And this is just a simple way that we can do that. So if you want more info, Mr. Ray has made himself available after church. You can talk to him. So today I'm very excited because we are ending our mission series, but we're ending it on a bang. Mrs. Karen Pierson, you saw her up here with her husband, Pastor Gary, a few weeks ago, and I'm going to let her explain what she did, but she was on the missions field for years. How, 30 years. So we have a seasoned missionary in our own congregation, and I'm very excited to hear what God has to say today through Mrs. Karen Pierson.
Isn't he just special? Oh, I love our pastor and his wife. Well, I'm glad to be here. I'm not sure I'm glad to be up here, but I'm because I'm not a preacher, and I'm not going to preach this morning. But I did want to say, we've been talking about missions, and I don't know how many of you know how missionaries become missionaries, why we become missionaries, or any of that. But there's one important thing that I want to share first, and that is that it is very important for churches like this and all around this country to pray for our missionaries. Yeah. To me, it's more important than the funds. God will provide. but we need you. I could tell you story after story after story of how God has used somebody in this country to pray now for so-and-so. And overseas in another country, in another culture, God is working at that very moment. I know because my mother was a praying woman, and she told me one time when we lived in Haiti, she was in the kitchen doing dishes, and she said she dropped to her knees. She knew she had to pray for us. And we were living in Haiti. It was terrible. It was bad. There was a lot of gunshots and a lot of turmoil. And she was praying for us that the roof would not cave in on us. God knows. So I want you to understand how to pray for missionaries. So I have made a card, and I don't know why the color is not better. I don't understand technology. So anyway, it's just a card. It says, "Your Father is not willing that any should perish." Now, you just think about that. Just think about. And on this side, it says, "How can I pray for missionaries?" I'm not going to take time to read it, but I'll have those on the table. It would be nice if we run out of them, I can make more and bring them another time. That's what I'll say. And another thing is, and I don't know if Pastor, you're aware of this magazine, Worldview. Do you get it? Oh, this is an incredible magazine from our headquarters in Missouri. And it's from our department, Assemblies of God World Missions. And it is prayer requests, it's stories about other countries, and they tell you how to pray for these other countries and what is going on in these countries. The more knowledgeable you are, the better you can pray. And so I have a few of these magazines on the table, and you can pick one up and take it home and read it. If you could, bring it back to the church so that someone else can, because you get one a month. Do we get one a month? So it's a good resource. Okay, now to anyway, whatever. Because I have to be honest with you, I'm not a preacher. God didn't call me to be the preacher of the family. Excuse me. He called me to be a wife and a mother, a helper, stand beside my husband, and to be what God wanted me to be in our home. But I said to Nicole just before the service, I'm not a preacher, but I know how God has worked in my life and how he has been faithful to me in my life. And I just want to get that. I want to share with you what God has done in my life. So this morning, I didn't even bring a Bible. And I don't have a whole lot of scriptures written down, because if I did, I'd have to read you the whole Bible, because everything in it that I have read, and I have read the Bible over and over many times, and it's true, and it's faithful, and it has changed my life. It has given me so much. So that's what I want to share with you today. I'm going to share quickly some of the things and how I got to be where I was and where I am today. But I would like to, from time to time, give you a specific illustration of what God has done in that situation. So I asked the pastor how long I have. I don't know how long it's going to take me. I'm not one of these missionaries or pastors that can condense it all into 5 minutes. I'm sorry. I'm a woman. I have lots of words. Were we able to get the slide? Oh, you didn't put the verse up. Oh, there it is. This is my verse. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed. For his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Lamentations 3, verses 22 and 23. So I am just going to share with you a missionary story, how I got there, where I've come through that, and where I am today. And throughout my career, and I'm going to call it that, my career as a missionary, because that was our life's work. That is what we did. So throughout that, people ask us all kinds of questions. I mean, they ask, silly things like, do you ride camels? If you're in Africa, I suppose, but not in Haiti. So, we have lots of questions like, why missions? Why do we give money to missionaries? How does God call someone? How do you know when God calls you? Does God call a person to a specific culture, a specific place? How do you become a career missionary? I wish the kids were in here. They need to hear this. Do you have to raise funds, and why, if you do have to have a budget? What is it like to live cross-culturally? Some of you people know about that, right? You've come from other countries, and you know how intimidating it can be to cross-cultural. And what does a missionary want to accomplish when they're in another country? How does one accomplish these goals? And the list goes on and on. So I don't want to just answer those questions. I'm going to integrate those into what I have to say and how God did those things through us. Okay. I guess it started when I was born. I was born into a pastor's home. My father and mother were pastors of a very small church in Pennsylvania. A small church, but a large family. There were 11 of us kids. And so if no one came for Sunday school, we still had a nice Sunday school class. But I grew up in that home. My parents were faithful. They loved God. They loved people. And when I was 6 years old, I can remember this like it was yesterday, and that's a long time ago. When I was 6 years old, I was sitting in my first grade classroom, and I wasn't paying attention to the teacher. I was daydreaming. I was daydreaming about the day that someday I would go to Bible school and learn what God had for me. That was 6 years old. How many of you have children that are 6? Yeah, 6 years old. I was saved when I was 9, filled with the Holy Spirit when I was 13. And I responded to a call of missions when I was 15. Now, this is where I want to share with you, because this doesn't happen to everybody this way. It doesn't happen. Now, my first husband was called when he was 6. He was praying at an altar, and he had a vision of Africa, and he knew that someday he would go to Africa. And he just lived his life that way. Well, when I was 15, we had a missionary in our church, and I was standing over there praying, and I was raising my hands, and I was thinking about what the missionary had shared, and I said, "Oh, God, if you can use me in this way, I am willing. I say yes." And that was the beginning. I knew from that moment on that someday I'd be on the mission field. After I graduated from high school, I went on to Bible school, and it was the same Bible school that I had daydreamed about when I was 6. It was the one my mother and father had gone to, and my in-laws also went there to that college, and now my future husband and I were both at that college, And we were in Bible school, and during my sophomore year, I met a guy by the name of Dale Prizer. I almost said Pierson. Dale Prizer. He was also a pastor's son. He was called to missions when he was 6. And we both had this vision of going somewhere for the Lord. And so after I graduated in 1972, we were married 3 weeks after I graduated, and we started our ministry in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, as youth pastors. And that was in the same church that Gary and Eileen, his first wife, had been youth pastors or administrative assistants 4 years before that. So it was bound to be Gary. And during that time that we were in Ephrata, my husband and I really wanted a child, and I wanted a son. But he never told me, but he wanted a daughter. And my daughter was born in 1974. And at first I was angry with God. I said, I wanted a boy. You made a mistake. But he did not make a mistake. I remember on the second day she was born, I looked at her and I saw in her eyes, I declare I looked into her soul and she looked into mine, and I said, there will never be another child like this. And she has been the incredible blessing throughout all of the rest of my life. She's just an incredible girl. And then, it can't be all good. 2 years after, not quite 2 years after that, I was taken to the hospital in labor early, 7 weeks early, and I was told in the emergency room that I was pregnant with twins. And I sat right up and I said, no, I'm not. Because I didn't want them. I just knew I couldn't take care of twins. But they were there. Once again, God knew what he was doing. And when they were born 3 days later, the doctor said to me, they are the healthiest premature children that I have ever delivered. God knows what he's doing. God knows. And my boys, let me tell you, don't ever wish for twins. It was hard. And I don't have time to tell you about all of that. My daughter was 22 months old when they were born. So I had 3 babies. I loved those babies. But there were times when I didn't love the boys so much. Sorry, Jonathan and Philip. But you know what? God was faithful, and he brought me through. That first year was horrendous. They cried day and night for 5 months. And it was hard. I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. But God intervened. God intervened. And he showed me how much he cared for me. And then he knew where I was and where I was going. I had a moment in time when I saw Christ, and he was holding my hand, and he pointed a pathway that went up a mountain. It was very narrow, very rocky. I can still see it. And he said, if you keep your hand in mine, and I keep my hand in yours, we will make it through the trip that I have chosen for you, the path. And he said, I know where every rock is, every turn, because I've been this way before. God is faithful. He brought me through that. And it hasn't been easy with the boys, but God has been faithful all through those years. And now it's time for us to apply for missions. And you have to, in our organization, if you want to be a career missionary, you go through a lot of things, and I don't have time. That's another whole story, another whole chapter of how you get yourself ready to become a career missionary. And you might ask, well, why? If God's called you, just go. Well, and some people do. But there are preparations that make it a lot more, what's the word I want, successful if you do those things. And so one thing that we had to do was raise our support. Why? Why do you have to raise money? Why do you have to have a budget? Well, they gave us this budget, and it considers the living, what's the word? No, the cost of living index in the country that you will be going to, and they consider that, and they consider what it's to rent a house for your children to go to school, for an office and everything in it, because you're going to be working. So you stop and think, if you had to raise money for the office that you work in and for the people that you have to hire to help, that's quite a budget. So there was a lot of things involved in that. It was not easy. So we had to visit churches, and we had to raise our support by people in churches just like this who say, we want to support this couple. We want to support this family. And so we pledge that once a month, we will send this much money to our headquarters, and they take care of all of our funds, and they disperse it to us to be used as it is intended to be used. So most countries, this is why we have to raise the money. Most countries that we go to, they will not allow a foreigner to work. Because if you work in that country, you're taking a position that someone in that country could be filling. So they don't want foreigners to be working in their workforce. Now, there are some things that you can do overseas that are acceptable, but boy, you have to go through a lot of curves and a lot of bumps and hills and red tape to be able to work in another country. So we had to have all of our money by the time we were ready to leave, plus our household goods and what our children, the first time we went to Haiti, we packed in big 55-gallon drums, and we packed everything that we tried to foresee what we would need for 4 years. How many shoes do your kids go through in 4 years when they're little and they're going to get big? So everything. I mean, we packed those barrels and we took those with us because in Haiti we couldn't get those things. It was hard in Haiti at that time. But God provided through churches just like you. We visited probably 400 to 500 churches in 1 year's time. And so we wanted to be prepared. So another thing we did was study the language. Est-ce que vous parlez le français? Hein? J'ai étudié le français. We studied French in Europe. And we not only studied the language of Haiti. Now, the government language in Haiti at that time was French. And it was French from France. And it was very good French. It later changed, and now it's Creole. So, of course, when we got there, we had to learn Creole. But we had to learn the language. We studied the culture. I don't know if you realize, but Haiti is rife with voodoo. It used to be said that there's Catholics and there are some Protestants, and the rest are, the whole that is part, but the whole country is voodoo, is into voodoo, witchcraft. And that was probably a good a statement that it was throughout the whole country. So we studied that. We didn't know anything about that. Only what we knew was from movies in this country. Let me tell you, it's nothing like that. Just ask me sometime about zombies. And your kids watch zombie movies. That's another story. I get on that one, huh? So we studied the culture. We also studied cross-cultural communications. Not just the language, not just the words, but how do you approach people in another culture? We learned that, and then we took other classes and studied human temperaments and how to deal with people and how to get along with people and work with people. Because we're going to be visitors in that country. We want to know everything we can. We had to learn to eat different foods and wear different clothing. I couldn't wear earrings in Haiti. I couldn't wear pants in Haiti. Here I am preaching. Whoa. I wanted to wear a dress, but I didn't have one. So we had to learn a lot of things. So what we do when we get into that culture is find someone we call a bridge person. And that is a person who knows their culture really well and can relate that to us as Americans, and they can help us to bridge that culture. And so that we can not offend people. We don't want to offend people. So what was it like when we lived in Haiti? I have to tell you my first impression of Haiti. Haiti is an island about the size of Maryland. Right now there's about 8 million people. Back then it was like 7 million when we lived there. And hot and humid, mountainous. It's down near the equator, it's just off Florida, but it's closer to the equator. And so when we flew into that country and we landed on the tarmac with 3 babies and luggage, and here we are, my husband was down those flight of stairs like a bullet out of a gun. He was so anxious. And he went on into the building, and I'm standing at the top of the stairs with 3 babies. And I said, oh, God, somebody's made a mistake. I will never be able to live here. That's what I said. But you know, God was faithful. God brought me through. Oh, I began to see the beauty of Haiti. I began to see the beautiful people. The things you read in the newspapers are so sad. They rend my heart because that's not what Haiti is all about. Haiti is poor. Haiti has a lot of problems, but the people are wonderful. And they're just wonderful. They just don't know Jesus. So it took us a while to acclimate to the culture, but we began to make friends and learn about the people. We enjoyed the beaches, the Caribbean. Oh, yeah. We enjoyed the mountains. We went camping with our children, and we did a lot of things. And then, of course, during all of that time, there was economic struggles, political struggles, change of attitudes toward Americans. And 4 or 5 times during the last few years that we were there, the U.S. government evacuated us. We had to leave Haiti. You close the door on your house, your everything, and your pets. You try to find some Haitian that can take care of your pets, and you leave the country. You walk away. Let me tell you, that's not easy. And one time, I had to leave with the 3 children and not my husband. He had to stay there. And it was terrible. that was another thing, I can't go into that. It was horrible. But God was faithful once again. And then the last time, just that last year before our term was finished, we were out of Haiti for 3 months, from October through December. And on January 1st, our government, the United States government, was saying, you can go back to Haiti if you want to. We're not saying you should, but you can. We were on a plane the next day back to Haiti. I cried the whole way there. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But God gave me somebody to focus on, that I could encourage that woman, that I could help her in every way, and that helped me. And I was able to finish out that term, and our daughter graduated from high school, and we finished out that term, and we left Haiti not intending to go back to Haiti. It was not totally because of the political situation, but a lot of issues had come up, and it was hard. So we decided not to go back to Haiti. That was our life. My children grew up there. They were there from pre-K through high school. My boys weren't quite finished high school, and you know what? They weren't too happy with us for not going back to Haiti. They loved Haiti. I'm telling you, they could sing the national anthem with all the Haitians. They loved Haiti. They would have gone back and fought with Haitians if they could have. But, so they were angry. So during this next 3 years, another change in our lives. We're not planning to go back to Haiti. We hadn't given up on Haiti. We hadn't quit praying for Haiti. We still pray for Haiti, but we weren't going to go back to live there. And so during this next 3 years, we went through a lot. Those boys of mine, you know, those ones I told you wasn't too happy about, they were 16 now, and they were so angry with us for not going back to Haiti, that they rebelled against us and against God and everything that they had been taught. They were into drugs, alcohol, women, parties, whatever, everything that they could get into. And you know, they're thinking, 16-year-olds, they're thinking, yeah, we're going to do this for a couple of weeks and rub it in mom and dad's face, and then we'll stop. They couldn't. They were hooked. They could not. There were many times when they would come home drunk or so high on drugs they could hardly come in the door. But we had an open door policy in our house. Our bedroom door was always open to my boys. Some nights they'd come home and they'd come to our bedroom. They knew that they could do that. And they'd throw themselves on the bed or down on the floor. And they'd say, Dad, help us. We're going into hell and we can't stop. And we would pray with them, pray with them. It was hard. It was the hardest thing we had ever done with those two boys, because by now, I loved those two boys. They were precious to me, and I knew that God had given me an extra measure of grace and mercy to have those boys in my home, because they had parties when we were away. We came home to find the glass in a hutch broken, chairs broken, blood up the walls. And I just prayed that that they wouldn't die in their sin. Once again, God was faithful. He helped me through that. I love those boys, and I didn't want them to die in their sin. And God was faithful. to help me to know what to say to them, to know how to treat them, to love them in spite of themselves. And they would be the first to tell you today that it's because of my love for them that they came back to God. So don't give up on your children, your grandchildren, don't give up on them. It's hard, it's horrible. You think you're not going to live, you wished you couldn't live. But God is faithful. That's what God is faithful. My husband, during that time, became very ill. He had a cerebral hemorrhage. And he was taken to the hospital, to the head trauma center. And they didn't expect him to come out. And just the weekend before that happened to him, I had been diagnosed with clinical depression. I don't know if you know what that is, but it was bad. And so when my husband's laying, isn't this awful? When my husband was laying in that bed, not responding to me or anything, I looked down at him and I said, "How dare you do this to me? I'm the one that needs help." Once again, God was faithful. He never left us. He never left us alone. As hard as it was, God helped me through that depression. He helped me how to know what to do and what not to do, and the right kind of medication to take and not take that and not do this. He helped me. And I began to revive and come back. And my husband, I think it was about a week later after that incident of the cerebral hemorrhage, he walked out of that hospital with not one after effect. No slurred speech, no motor skills that were lost, nothing. God healed him and touched him, and he walked out of that hospital. Don't tell me God can't heal. I know that God can heal because he had healed my husband before. And so I knew that God was still with us. Even though it was hard, even though every day was a struggle. Every day was a struggle. But God was there. God was faithful. And he came out of that. And after that happened, he went on to teach at our Valley Forge University. Back then it was called Valley Forge Christian College, and he was head of the missions department. He wrote policy manuals. He worked and got his master's degree. He had no after effects of a cerebral hemorrhage, which is usually stroke, right? Symptoms. So God healed him. And then time came after he was finished with that term at the college that if we didn't go back to the field, we would lose our appointment with the Assemblies of God World Missions. I'm telling you, women, wives, it's not always easy to do what your husband wants. It's not. Because he wanted to go back to the field. My boys were living in cars, in and out of jail, on drugs, the whole business. I said, God, how can you allow me to go to a mission field? What do I have to offer? Except love for people. That's what I had to offer. And so at that time, our headquarters, our AGWM, decided they had had a request for someone to come, a missionary to come to Trinidad and Tobago to start a church in a like a gated community type place. A lot of high-class people, doctors, barristers, boutique owners. I mean, we're talking some pretty nice houses and all of that. And the national church had never been able to start a church among those people. And they wanted us to come and start a church. And they also wanted us to work with the national leaders of Pentecostal assemblies of the West Indies. And so we got on a plane and we left my boys. They were in college for 2 weeks. Then they got in trouble and they were out of college, living in their car, running around, getting in trouble, taking drugs. And I said, one day I was at home, I put my head down and I said, okay, God, if this is what you want, I'll do it. I'll die there, but I'll do it. And so we got on a plane, Philadelphia. We had to fly to Miami, and then from Miami to Trinidad and Tobago. And when we got on the plane, I cried the whole way to Miami. I turned my face to the window. I didn't talk to my husband. That poor man, I don't know what he was thinking. And I just cried the whole way. And we had to stay overnight in Miami before we could get the plane the next day to go to Trinidad. And that evening, we decided to buy a new printer for this new church that we were going to start. We thought we could really use a new one. And so it was in its box, original box, and we set it down inside of another box to help protect it. And we flew from Miami to Trinidad, and it's usually at night when you land there. And we landed on the tarmac. I cried the whole way there. How can you do this to me, God? How can I leave my sons? We are the only connection that they have with God. How can you do this? But when we landed, I dried my tears, picked up our stuff. We got off that plane, walked across the tarmac, and there were double doors that swing open to go into immigration. I am not exaggerating. When that door opened and I took one step inside that building, like a waterfall of God's peace just filled me. It was so strong, I knew that if I stepped back, it would be gone. But I didn't have any chance to talk to my husband about this. So I was like, oh God, I'm excited now. It was unbelievable what happened. Nothing had changed except my heart. And so here we are. Excuse me. We're walking down this long hallway. We get to immigration, and they're giving us a horrible time in immigration. And then you have to go through customs with all of your luggage and all of your whatever, and you have to have papers that declare what you have. So what do you think we put on that paper? A new printer. It was right there. But when we got to that line, they said, come with us. And they took us to another part of the airport, sat us down at a long table with two agents sitting on the other side of the table. They opened a book and they began to read the law that we had broken. We were trying to smuggle this printer in. And so there we sat and we're going, now, remember, my husband's sitting there, but he doesn't know what God has done in my heart already. He has no idea, the poor man. I can't fathom what. Oh no, this is it, boy. And they said we owed, I think it was $10,000, or we spent the night in jail. Well, it was a bribe, but it was real nonetheless. And they meant what they said. So we're sitting there and we're explaining to them, we didn't hide it. It's right there on our paperwork. I mean, how can we hide it? You see it. And we said we put it in another box to conceal the words on it so somebody wouldn't try to take it. But that's all. But Well, after a few minutes of talking with us and telling us how serious this was, because you have to understand, the Assemblies of God doesn't pay money like that. So we didn't have $10,000 in our personal account. And so there we were, brand new country. See, God, I told you. Those two men got up, went out the door and around the corner to another room, and I turned to my husband and I said, if the devil thinks he's going to stop us now, he has another thing coming. And my husband, I said it just like that. I meant it. And those two men came back into the room, calm and quiet, erased our names from the book, and let us go. Is God faithful? Does God take care of us in hard situations? And that was the beginning of a wonderful time in Trinidad and Tobago. We loved Trinidad and Tobago. In fact, we had talked about retiring there. It was so wonderful. We loved the people, loved what we were doing. We started that church. We started with like 10 people. And we had canvassed the whole area. And in Trinidad, they're very wary of American preachers because they knew the story of, what was his name? Jimmy Jones. Do you know the story of Jimmy Jones? I don't have time to tell you now, but they knew the story of Jimmy Jones, and they weren't trusting any American that came in there. But what we did was made a brochure saying exactly who we are, where we came from, what we're going to teach, who is involved, da-da-da-da-da. And we put that at everybody's house. And people accepted that. They really did, and people started to come to church. In fact, we started with about 10 people. Pretty soon it was 30 people. Every week people were getting saved. Healed. Whole families getting healed. God was doing amazing things. He was using us. He was showing us how you can come into a culture and not change the culture, change the hearts of people. And it was phenomenal. We loved it. We would be so tired by the end of Sunday, the day, but we were so excited. We just were, it was incredible. And the people that were meeting, everybody knew my husband. He was like Gary. You go into a store, you talk to people. You talk to people behind the counter. You talk to people in the store. That was my husband. And so everybody knew him. Everybody recognized him. And so that church just began to grow. We were up to about 200 in a year and a half's time. Year and a half? No, 2 years, 2.5 years it was. Have you ever had in your life one moment in time that changed everything? Everything. Now I know we have babies, that changes. We have a death, that changes. But here we are in this foreign country, and things are going so well. We're just loving this. And just a side note, my sons had come to visit us while we were in Trinidad to see how things were going with Mom and Dad. And the people in that church loved my boys so much, it brought them to their knees. And they both are serving God today. Yes. They're married to wonderful girls, and they are serving God with all of their heart today. And it hasn't been an easy road for them, but God is faithful. I cannot say that enough. God is faithful. One moment in time changed my life forever. Dale was there, and the next moment he was gone. Just like that. He was scuba diving with another missionary, and they brought him out of the water. And I put my hand on him and I said, Dale, I'm here. And his heart rate and his pulse came back to normal. But I saw the doctor looking, and there happened to be doctors at this hotel, German doctors. And so this one German doctor was taking care of him. And he's still in his wetsuit from being out in the water. And she's just looking at him, and she turned to me and she said, has he ever had problems with his brain? Yes, 5 years ago, he had a brain, on an aneurysm, a bleed, hemorrhage. And she said, she never said another thing to me. She closed his eyes and walked away. I knew, she knew that he had another one that he wasn't going to walk away from. And I put my hand on him and I said, it's okay, Dale. God is with me. God is faithful. But God took away the best thing that ever happened in my life was Dale Preiser. He was everything. He was a man of God. He was loving and kind to me, compassionate, loved our children. Oh, he loved our children. He did everything he could for our children. He was a wonderful man, but he was not alive anymore. So what was going to happen to me? How could I go on? I didn't know if I wanted to go on. But God, we were in another island, when this happened, staying with another couple of missionaries. And I was in a room downstairs, and I was sitting on the sofa, and I just said, God, I have always said yes to you. Always. But I'm not sure I can say yes anymore. I don't think I can take anymore. And somebody had put a little tiny book in my hand, and I love books. So I just looked down. While I'm saying this to God, I looked down, and it was just a little book that had a whole bunch of Bible verses in it. So I opened it, and I started to read it, one after another. God's faithfulness, God's peace, God's joy, God's help, God's strength. I just kept reading. By the time I had to stop, it was as if a fountain inside of me was breaking loose and coming out of me. It was like the joy of the Lord was phenomenal. The peace of God in all of that had happened. Oops, something's happened. I'm almost finished. Yeah, almost finished. Sorry, kids. So at that moment, God reminded me that I had said yes to him before I knew Dale Preiser. And he said to me, almost audibly, he said to me, are you still willing to say yes? And I said, yes, I am. I'll be real short with this. God called me to another ministry. I had to leave Trinidad. I didn't want to leave Trinidad, but I was sent to an office in Springfield, Missouri. The last place on earth I ever wanted to live was Springfield, Missouri. I said, my husband, he's a stinker. He left. He doesn't have to live in Springfield. I lived there 16 years, and I worked in a ministry called Latin America Caribbean Library Services. God had brought me from a little town in Pennsylvania, Glen Fernie, Pennsylvania. In that little town, Bible school, Haiti, France, the islands. He had brought me to Trinidad, and now I'm in Springfield. But the ministry is working with all of Latin America and the Caribbean. That would be my husband. Well, it's time. I know it's time. But during those 16 years that I worked with that ministry, I was the project coordinator, and I put together libraries for our Bible schools, over 1,200 Bible schools in Latin America and the Caribbean, because it's amazing what God does, how he brings it all around, and he just brings you back in. When we lived in Haiti, we worked with Editorial Vida, which was, they printed books, and on my table out there, you will see some of those books that we used to distribute in Haiti and some of the other islands. And now I'm working with a library, okay. Bible schools in Latin America didn't even know what libraries were. Now, in what was going on in all these countries at this time, the governments of the country were saying to these Bible schools, you have to have you have to have libraries that go with what you're teaching. You have to have them. That's the only way you can get accreditation for your schools. And the governments were saying this all over Latin America. And also what God had been doing, there was a revival in Latin America. And there were so many people that were coming to know the Lord and being called to ministry, but they had no place to study, to know how to rightly divide the word of truth. And so here we are, the director Everett and myself, we're working with all of these libraries. God brought us full circle, and now I'm helping to train all of these new people that will go out into, just in closing, BGMC, we've talked about BGMC. BGMC gave us money. We bought books for a Bible school library. Guess where that Bible school was? In the Amazon jungle. The Amazon jungle. That's where those books, they went by boat and donkey. I don't know how they got there. But they were in Amazon jungle. And do you know who was attending that Bible school at the time? A former witch doctor who had given his life to the Lord. And you know what he said? I want to study the word so that I can go to the other tribes that you don't even know about in the Amazon jungles. God is faithful. I just want to say to you, think about your life. This is not just my story. This is God's story. God can do this in your life if you're willing to say yes. Even if it's hard, even if it doesn't go the way you think it should. There is nothing, rien du tout, rien, nothing that will fill that empty spot in your heart and give you peace. You will never know the faithfulness of God if you don't allow him to come in. No drugs, no alcohol, no relationships, no bank, no church, no government. Nothing can fill that place except God himself. And that's what I want to pray with you about this morning. Please see my table. It's about Haiti, and there are a lot of things out there, and the books, and I'll put these cards out there, the magazines. Lord, I just thank you. I thank you for these wonderful people. I just want them to know that you are faithful. My life is coming to the end, maybe, but I've had such a full life. And oh God, I have never been sorry that I said yes to you, never. God, you have been so faithful. And I want your people in this congregation to know your faithfulness, to know your peace, to know your love, to know your strength that takes us through all of life's situations, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever. God, you can do that if we open our hearts to you. And I pray for the people in this congregation and for those who we're going to touch in this community and in this state. Lord, thank you, thank you, thank you for my life in you. Amen.
Well, if you would stand with us today. I don't know about you, but I know that the Holy Spirit is here. And everything that Miss Karen just said is true. And maybe you are here today and maybe your view of church or your view of God is that everybody that follows God has their life put together. But one of the things that I love about Miss Karen's story is that through all of the things in her life, God's faithfulness was always there. She didn't always like it, right? And there's moments in our life where we face things that maybe we don't like, or maybe we haven't given God a chance because we feel like we have to fix our life first before we can give our life to Christ. But the faithfulness of God is unlike anything else. And I am so thankful that you were able to share today. And I believe Pastor Zach was right when he said we're ending on a bang, because what a great way to end our mission series, talking about the faithfulness of God. Because at the end of the day, without him, where would we be? So I encourage you as you go out this week to remember that God is for you. He's not against you. And maybe later on this week, you'll feel a tug in your heart. And that tug is the Holy Spirit reminding you that God is with you, that God is for you, and he'll never leave you. Life might not look like you thought it would. There will be highs and there will be lows. But God is always faithful. So go with grace. Go in the name of the Lord today. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.